You heard any more about that?
No, Matt probably has a lot more info on that than I do. Where everything's at. We got, I know Billy's not gonna be here today. George, assuming he's coming in, and then Matt's gonna be here also.
Heavy rain. Just what we need.
It's dark out there.
It's still covered, one little small section of Coast Guard Road.
I know it's getting down with it right on the mainland.
It is, there's like some of that Swansville, it's coming
God.
down today.
My dad and my buddy went to pick up a boat from Monzo Bay to go get fuel for the tournament this weekend, and they were sent me a picture of it developing over there.
Gotcha.
So, this way.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Dude, I got it. Talking about food distributor, man, it was like, they actually had guys that they recruited for US Foods that had the biggest trucks, the highest trucks, to actually go out and drive around and try to find routes to be able to service people in Oak Island, because you can't get food to them, restaurants are closed,
17's completely.
nobody can get in and out.
My buddy flies for Southwest, and his hub is in Myrtle Beach. And he's like, he lives in Hampstead, so he had to go up to 74 and come back around. He said it wasn't as bad as he thought it was going to be, but one of his buddies flies a helicopter for, I guess, the sheriff's department,
Right.
and they sent a video this afternoon. So what's up?
Save room for Billy.
Yeah, he's not.
That was this afternoon still. Oh, wow.
Just south of him?
Yeah.
I mean, that's the whole highway,
The
bro.
whole highway is turned into a river. So,
That's amazing.
I mean,
Is that where it collapsed, or they showed pictures of a truck like in the collapsed road on 17?
yeah,
the other
that's
day.
gonna be somewhere in there, but that water's just still,
That's just still just hanging
it
out.
hadn't moved.
Yeah.
Glad that's not here.
Turn this bad boy off. What's up, Jen?
Hey, how are you?
Doing great. How about you?
Good.
So y'all want to talk about the rain?
Mhm.
Guess that's why we're all here, right?
Something about that.
Something about that. Something about
somewhere
rain.
in there.
Yeah.
What to do with it when it hits. Build mountains so you have relief.
Splashing some puddles.
Everything goes away pretty quick.
Rain is expected in 34 minutes.
So, it is a little after.
Charles
I'm not gonna
Right.
talk to you.
Man, y'all, we're in a drought right now.
So it's a little after 3, we'll go ahead and get started. George comes in, we'll fill him in. I've put together, of course, everybody should have received the meeting packet via email. So I've put things together in in this PowerPoint presentation. So that's the agenda that we have for today's meeting. We're gonna start off reviewing, just notes from each of the 2 meetings we've had prior to this, make sure there's nothing missing that you guys as committee members, remember that should be. We're going to look over some of the, cause one of the requests was made, what stormwater items did the UDO committee review, in preparation for the recommendations they did. We're starting that. We did pull out some information, but we're likely to have more information for you guys to review in the October meeting. And then we also talked about hotspots and the possibility of doing site visits. It's to do it efficiently, we're gonna have to narrow it down to some of our more headache-prone areas. But we'll cover some of those visits, especially after this tropical cyclone number 8, and some of the impacts that did. cover anything else that you guys as a committee would like to see, and then, of course, a future meeting schedule through the end of calendar year 24, but obviously looking at possibility of establishing something for the 2025 year. So, you guys got in your packets a copy of the notes from the August 15th, 24 meeting. Were there any concerns, any proposed additions that you guys would like to see? This is not a formalized board, so it does not require any motions or anything like that. It's just wanting to make sure that we properly convey what this committee has discussed and what they're looking for, so.
Yeah, that was pretty accurate summary of what we wanted.
All right, so how about the August 27th meeting?
Fine with me.
Yeah, I went through them. I think everything was summarized pretty well. Thank you very much.
All right. Well, I can't take credit. We toyed around with some AI capabilities and it did a really good job of summarizing things.
Wow. Yeah, that was AI. That's pretty good.
Yeah, it's
It's amazing.
pretty impressive.
It's amazing.
Yeah.
If you guys were to say your names clearly into the mic next time, we were testing it, but it didn't grab you.
Okay.
Then it would know Josh said, Greg said, it was,
I'm doing it right now. I'm
right.
trying to do it.
Yeah, you really need to go around the table and
Mm.
say your name, it should pick you up.
Yeah, I think I talked with Mark about that after the first meeting.
Yeah, this might be a little harder with a singular mic. When you had individualized mics, we think we can probably use that now.
Okay.
It's pretty cool.
And where it just literally records and puts everything.
It should grab it verbatim and then you can pair it
Also,
down.
we've already used it twice for the Board of Commissioner meeting, and so I've assigned their names to the voices, so it already knows it, I think.
Makes
It
your
already
job
knows your
10
voice.
times easier.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And what's awesome is nothing's missed.
Yeah.
No,
Every
it'll
word's
do-
captured.
It'll do action items at the
That's a
top.
big deal.
That's my favorite part.
Pretty well.
That is
Like, it has the action items right at the
official
top.
meetings.
I never said that.
Actually did.
You will see.
Oh, better yet, you want to hear it?
So, again, this is probably gonna be some, probably have a lot more information for you guys to review in the October meeting, but initial review on UDO committee notes. We did have summaries of staff proposed amendments for stormwater-related issues. One was submitted in November of 22, one in April of 23. And as I said, staff is continuing to review, but just to give an idea of the items that were looked at as far as improvements for code, consolidating, introductory, subsections of authority and whatnot, remove redundant vague statements, lower the permit exemption from 1,000 impervious to 500 square feet of impervious, add stormwater management plans must be professional designed. Then add that the installation of stormwater plans must be inspected and approved by a design professional and provide a certificate at the completion of the project. So again, we have reverted back, but understand this, for any small area residential plan, if it's designed by an engineer, we require that engineer to certify once it's done. So that's still in there, but when we shifted gears in March, that 500 square feet of impervious coverage reverts back to 1,000 as the exemption. And in the 23, just updated the format, and in the new provisions on the construction entrance to have the driveway rocked, that tends to reduce dramatically sediment that flows off the construction site onto the roads. So those are initially some of the things we were able to capture, and again, like I said, our contractor for that plan provided with the addition. We got everything shaded as far as residential, multifamily, those that are zoned appropriately. So you'll see most of ours is that yellow residential. So you got an idea where some of those vacant lots were at that time. And then, of course, the sub-acre lots, so in that kind of a violet, dark violet, or excuse me, the light purple is under 1 acre, and then the dark purple is over an acre. So that's again, this is our baseline, and we're working on getting updated information and locations on that. Another thing that we looked at is just the development, redevelopment. So you'll see, especially around those areas that we have transitioned to these mixed-use zoning districts. So you got the Village East, Village West, the Marina District. There. So this is Village West area. This is Village East, where the the pier's right here. And then over at the Marina, those are all mixed use. I think it popped out of the this land use plan as far as new districts. But that gives you an idea of some of the potential redevelopment lots. And you'll see some of these, as we talked about before. Now granted, this one right here that's in the conservation district. That's that park area that the town acquired. But you do have these mobile home lots that we talked about in previous meetings that lend themselves to redevelopment if the time ever came to that point. So it's kind of playing around with that understanding. And if I'm going too fast, you guys stop me, but I'm going to go into the hotspot areas that we briefly discussed. So I'm going to start off the Pine Street area. So in this area, right about here, you have some ponding on there. We've started off providing with the county's contour systems. One concern with that is we do not know how accurate it is, how dated it may be. It seems very different what it's conveying here to where it's on site. And this kind of gives you an idea of just the progression. Starting off, I guess it's reverse progression, but here's what there's on, here's a physical look on Piney Street in 2024. That was shot in January. This is an area, and this will make better sense on the next street view side. This area has been filled in, so it kind of goes into some of the conversations we had when we talked about fill in the last meeting, how we're going to regulate that and the impacts it has on the stormwater. Let me shift over. That gives you an idea of what it was before, that same area. So you can see it's graded down there. So all that stormwater flow has been diverted, filled in, and it goes onto the road, which is not what we wanted to see.
And pause that one, those 2 parcels south of there that he's showing you that were developed. So those 2 parcels in combination with the infill of the northernmost lot has caused dramatic backup on Pine Street where it didn't stand before, now it stands. And it's gonna be 6 to 8 inches here by 4 o'clock.
Yeah. So again, this gives you that overview on what was there back in 2019, 2015, and then 2004. So you can see at one time it was heavily wooded, and you guys know that even on this area where we've also seen a lot of flooding and stormwater just hanging out there for a couple days after an event. You see there was a lot of what I always call straws. I mean, you got roots in the ground, it's going to soak up what it can.
Can you point out the lot that we just had a complaint on?
This
One over to the right, there's the one to the right.
Oh, this one?
Well, back in between there, and
7203,
yeah,
is that what it is?
that's the
this one.
complaint that we had.
But yeah, the complaint lives there, but the complaint was on this property.
Right, so what you had is now when you advance the development, if you go backwards in those, drawings, you'll see where you start to see houses.
Well, you can see right there, clear in 15.
Yeah, a lot was cleared, a whole lot.
So that is where people are losing their minds and getting really angry from, in the last 20 years, those two lots being cleared, and then all the clearing that occurred on Piney now has necessitated and allowed for all the water to be stopped on Piney, and it just sits there. So the pre-existing homes that are on the westerly side of Piney are taking the brunt of it, and if you'll point to the second home down, that house, now all the water runs right up their driveway underneath their home.
It was,
And we were called there during Debbie.
that's on the 17th, and this is their property right there where you can see it's just dissipating, but it was a little bit higher in that property.
It was the same way during Debbie, and we got called out there. It was there for 5 or 6 straight days, and it was sometimes as deep as 18 inches.
As you can see, there's no outlet to it, so it's just, it's waiting for this not to occur, the rain and the sun to evaporate it.
And the pre-existing home, which is the second from the sound on the left, on the west side, she was demanding that we pump it, and there's nowhere to pump it
Yes, we don't have any easements behind those homes.
to. We have none.
Mhm.
And so you can see the home on the right, did you work on either of those two, right?
The one you can't see where the
Right,
driveway,
closest one.
the extra driveway
This
right
one
there, yeah, we built that house. Because where this,
That's right next to AB's, right?
Yeah,
I'm
that's
looking at
Chris's.
I'm looking at AB's truck.
yeah, you're looking.
Cause
at-
his was a hole back in the day.
Yeah, so when we developed this lot, it's the other Chris, this was a sand hill here behind it. And it was about a foot off of his wall that was mounded up. And we cleared and graded that the best we could from, inside the right of way right there out. And we were told at the time we couldn't cut this, 'cause we were going to, I was gonna cut a ditch across there. But I was told we couldn't cut it any lower because the water line didn't have 36 inches of cover.
Right, so I'll tell you this today, if that came to my desk, I would tell Ethan that we would pay the water company to remove and lower their line, because that has to provide a relief. So if that would occur today, that's my immediate action. We do not have an easement there, we can't move the water there, and that's what I had to tell the family when we were on site. It's a low point, but the water is held in. It's in combination to the infill to the house furthest north on Sound Drive. It was Rudy's old house, right? So, what used to then hold all the water in those 3 lots is all 100% been elevated, and it stopped any water transference from the west to the east.
So you can visibly see the grade separation there compared to
Yep.
what it is there.
So all the
Right.
water would run off of Piney, and it no longer
Yeah.
can. And then this driveway to your left is the one that's now holding all the water. All of his mulch moves into the driveway. He rakes it back into the landscaped area, and then the pool directly to the north, which would be where those trucks are parked. We firmly believe and have it at, I think that they're backwashing their pool into the street. So, that may actually be a compounding factor. There's no ditch to hold their pool water either.
Yeah, you can see.
On a dry day, it floods too. I go, it's gotta be backwashed.
Yeah, I mean, you can see some scarring coming from this adjacent property, so it gives you that visual reference on where the water goes. Another hot spot, and again, we can definitely increase this, list of hot spots to look at, but, post tropical cyclone number 8, this was another hot area right there at that Sound Drive cul-de-sac, all the way at the end. And again, it's, looking at the development cycle, it does have, you do have the contours on there, you've got some of these high areas, and then obviously the low point is your cul-de-sac. That's what's there as of February 24. And then the progression. Now granted, this one's kind of an interesting, but I was trying to keep the same cycles as the other maps. This is 2019, so this was post-Florence, so that's where you see a lot of scarring going on there, a lot of damage, because those are totally exposed. But also looking at 15, you see, once again, you see a lot of trees. And then further going into 2004, there again, you see the trees. It's kind of like showing a progression. Once those trees start removing, you get possibilities of that occurring. But on that same notion, you can see the low spot. Low spot's that cul-de-sac, everything else is high. But the intent is to make sure that we understand development's gonna occur and make sure we have proper codes to capture and try to avoid this as much as possible. Right now it's set at 2 inches. If it's a 3-inch event, our code's not covering that. It's just covering a 2-inch event.
Raise your hand and say that now what you have, Josh, is this is where we had to get permission from the state. We did this week, and we had to order in 6-inch pumps. We had to order in rental dams. We're moving out. Now we have 9 active pumping locations that we're currently dealing with, this being one of them. But we couldn't get permission to discharge until you get to greater than 3 inches in a 24-hour period standing on asphalt. We had to send photographic evidence. Now we had to notify Shellfish Sanitation, 2 other department heads of DEQ, because when we notified Andy, who was our previous contact, now we have to notify Andy, Aaron, and Tom all simultaneously. I had to get permission where the Circle Drive pump failed this week. I had to track down a doctor in Greenville to get permission to pump into his vacant land, and we're still doing that as of 3 o'clock today. Then we got complaints that we weren't in Cape Emerald fast enough. You were copying out all those.
So that's some of the hot spots, and
And Chris, if I will, I don't think, just my opinion from a hydrology state, the 2 inches, 3 inches, 4 inches, 1 inch, that doesn't matter. The problem is grading. That's what's driving this. If we had some outlet or some way to alleviate the act of God, the 2, 3, 4, 10 inch in 12 hours, there's no way we can design for a storm water system. One, that report, our groundwater just can't handle it. And 2, there's always gonna be a storm that's greater, that's gonna cause flooding. If you don't have proper grading, we're gonna have inundation. That's just the nature of hydrology. Water's not gonna run through, embankment and fill and concrete as if it would if we had a channelized section for it to get out. And I know, people that don't understand development, it's not as easy as just getting an easement and cutting a ditch, because we can't have a point discharge into SA waters. It's got to stop 50 feet back and dissipate with some type of design device. But, when you stop and back up, the elevation of that cul-de-sac is probably a 2 or 3, maybe a 4. So even if we got an easement and we had 50 feet, would we have grade to get it out?
So to answer your question on that particular one, it should be 4.17 as my last measurement, which has to fall a minimum of 0.5% over the 168 feet. So we have to drop that new seawall a minimum of 19 inches to get the minimum fall. It's a 12-foot wide easement with a 6-foot wide swale with an 18-foot inch depth drop, and it's still gonna hold water in a wet period, right? And so we have photographic evidence of all of it, and I kept answering the neighboring property owner, the neighboring property owner's son, the neighboring property owner's daughter, the neighboring property owner's attorney all last week as to, yep, thanks for your picture from the 3rd floor, your wall's still holding your water in.
Right.
And we took those measurements less than 2 weeks ago. So they're within half a tenth, but they're close. We gotta go shoot with a transit. But we can get that water to walk out, but the problem is, the people put legally a new seawall in and built the seawall up 24 inches, and all it did was hold their water.
So they just domed themselves in,
100%.
reverse domed themselves in.
100%.
But now it's the town's fault.
And they have been screaming at us for the last 24 months.
Oh, I've been seeing them.
Which is
Vicky's persistent.
essentially hydraulic trespassing. If you dam up, the natural progression of stormwater, you can't, it goes above our ordinance
right?
That's a state general statute, it's hydraulic trespassing.
So-
And nobody wants to go there with that.
But
because
they
that's
had
gonna cost
permission,
everybody.
they followed all the steps to put their seawall in, which their seawall will protect us on once a year when the tide rises, like Monday, when you had a king tide combined with a 7-inch event combined with a high tide, yep, their yard would have taken water. But the other 364 days, the water would have traversed its way out, and we keep articulating that point to the avail of deaf ears. But the reality is, that's happening persistently, so I would ask Ethan, in addition to proper grading, roadside swaling and or ditching would provide the greatest amount of capacity, would it not, with the least amount of cost?
Absolutely.
Everywhere we've cleaned the ditches on 58 is working, and we had no issues today. The problem is, on Reed and East Reed, we have 189 or 191 now documented locations. We've showed you 3 or 4. On Reed, we were gonna pay $300,000 to pump that water with a 2-inch force main, pump it over and dump it out by Blue Water. And when I went to Blue Water on Monday at 11:30, you were with me, how deep was the water? Knee deep.
Yeah.
I said, what, you can't, you're not gonna be able to pump it. And so ultimately, we need permission to pump all this water either into a dune infiltration system like Greg's been so helpful to help us do in Land's End, which could potentially defease 250,000 gallons of water. Or we're gonna need permission to dump it into Archer's Creek, which is a lot harder to get.
Right.
Or we're gonna need permission and buy land, sound side, so that we can dissipate that at a minimum of 30, preferably at 50, over some sort of a filtration basin, natural vegetated state, so that the water can naturally purify before it's being point source discharged into any definitive waters, because we've closed the ocean this week and we've closed all the sound side because we're pumping all the water away.
Right.
But people, I mean, I just wanna be real, when it gets to be right next door to your house, it becomes a real problem, does it not?
It's a huge problem when it's right next to us.
When it's next to you, and so then that elevates and those tensions, emotions are high. And in this particular case, whether you're talking about Deerhorn or Doe, we have one pump that moves to a second pump that tries to move the water out, that tries to ultimately get its water to the sound. We're conveying all this water in that system, and we were overwhelmed on Monday.
To what you're saying, these homeowners that are directly impacted, would they be willing to give a 10-foot easement behind a 40, a lot of these right-of-ways are 40 foot. There's no way to get a 20, 22-foot strip pavement with a shoulder and a ditch. Do you think they would be willing to allow us to come in and have a 10-foot easement? It's already inside, your 30-foot minimum building line, so you can't build into it. 10-foot, most of these lots, you're still outside the septic setback to put in your gentle, 12 to 14-inch swell to alleviate the water from the pavement, from the road.
I can definitely answer your question, but I would prefer that the people in the room honestly answer what they will do because you all are property owners here. If approached by the town to put stormwater in your front yard, what's your answer gonna be? You're gonna go from a flat base front yard to a negative 24-inch wide, 24-inch deep.
Someone that's got flooding problems is gonna go, yeah. Someone that doesn't isn't gonna care.
And
Why
so-
would I let you tear up my front yard? My front yard doesn't flood.
And then you're gonna have, I would prefer to mow my front yard, right? Like, you're gonna get through all this conversation. And then some of those places, we have water table that's gonna be really, 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 really close to that surface level.
It's not, in my situation, something like that's not even feasible to profile what I've got in the front yard, unless I start parking in the street and you take out my driveway. But, I guess, and I don't wanna get, I'm just trying to learn and absorb and understand what this is all about. I see a lot of places that were naturally retaining water, that developers come in and they just bulldoze it, backfill it, flat cut it, drain it to the road, walk away and say, pay me for my house.
No.
And all that water, and you can see it on multiple homes in our development. All that water is now direct access to the street instead of natural percolation into the groundwater.
Pine.
And that's what happened on Pine. It was no forethought. I thought there was restrictions about backfilling and changing grade and things like that. It just seems like they're ignored.
So let's talk about the personal property rights of those owners. This is where you're gonna have a collision. So what are the personal property rights of that person that owns those two lots? They have a right to develop.
Right.
Our codified ordinance today reads you can put up to 2 foot of fill without what?
Without an engineer.
Engineered stormwater plan.
Once you reach 2 foot, maybe you did here, then what'd you have to do?
You have an engineer and certified.
So there are rules that allow for that, and therein lies the issue that I own a parcel that may have a depression. Is it my responsibility to take on everyone's water, yes or no? The answer legally is no.
Well, 25 years ago, that lot where the pond is on Deerhorn was an owned lot that the town condemned. And took that lot over and put that pond in. It doesn't mean that you can't take the same processes. If it's better for the community, it may be an expense to take that lot and buy that lot from that homeowner, but you can condemn a lot and you can take that lot, if that's the solution in that area, what's it cost you to condemn that lot and put it in your system versus what you're gonna spend in pumping?
Absolutely have his answer. There's 12 identified lots that already done. Joe Smith, Matt Zapp, and Josh Edmondson identified as needing to be purchased. One elected official in the room, what is your stance on condemnation of taking someone else's property?
Slippery slope.
Probably
It's been
not-
done.
Probably not gonna do it.
It has, but I look at it like this. I built my house 10 years ago, and water was coming on my land at that point. I built it up. Water now goes somewhere else. It goes to the neighbor's yard that hasn't built anything. How can I look at him and say, you can't build anything because I put my water in your thing 10 years ago and I don't want the water coming
How
back?
about the people that build next to a lot that's already occupied and force all their water over into that person's lot?
That's where the slippery
Where does
slope
the
comes
county
in.
ordinances come in to protect that person?
So this is all about city evaluation. So everything we're discussing, be a little bit biblical, nothing new under the sun here, y'all. So we
Right.
definitely had this conversation. So it's a counterbalance between existing and future rights and development within that area. And so unless it's a privatized HOA situation with an overlay that you're gonna do some restrictions on a public street, you can build on that lot, and that's the $1 million question. So when it becomes non-condemnation, fair market value, purchase outright, we had an identified list in 2019 and 2020, the cost of those lots tripled in less than 18 months. So we're down to this exact question that you breached while we're looking at the East Reed and Reed Drive problem. We had $35,000 left for Cedar, we have $185,000 left for Reed. The pump system at Reed was estimated at $185 and came in north of $700,000 when bid. We rebid it, we've gotten it down to $400,000. We met with the engineering team, we met with the contractor. We theoretically could pull it off for $300,000, but that's still pumping it somewhere that it's not gonna work. So I had to stop the project on Tuesday. It would be less expensive to buy the $420,000 lot with the single wide mobile home on it. Remove the mobile home and dig a big giant hole, and that's where we are. It's listed today for $419. Our grant will not permit us to buy any land, it prohibits it exclusively. Even though that would be the right solution. So the town's now gonna have to come out of its coffers and purchase the land. We currently have $5 million in reserve, which has us at less than 24%, which the state requires us a minimum of 24%. So we are either gonna have to raise taxes to the tune of 3 pennies, or we're gonna have to put an overlay stormwater district tax on for every single one of the 6,500 parcels. That's the conversation that has been had here 2 years ago that now you have to wrestle with as well. Sound familiar? So, 1 penny generates $300,000 annual, a 3 penny increase would give you roughly the $900,000 needed to go into the stormwater fund to perpetually purchase, manage, execute, and maintain the system. Those are figured very accurate estimations.
As the commissioners ever, I'm not sure ever, but in recent years thought about doing a stormwater on a new construction or any building permit, do a certain fee that's based on the overall cost of the build as a, impact fee to the stormwater. I'm sure builders aren't gonna like it, but at the end of the day, they're not the only ones causing the problem. As existing conditions and drainage, they're not helping it, but they're not the only ones causing it. Some of the missed practices in the last 10 years have caused it. But is that something that has come up?
It came up in this group prior to the new board's transition. You had roughly at that point 590 remaining undeveloped lots, the ones that Ray's indicating, Josh's neighbor next to him. You have that, but it's really the redevelopment. So what we're seeing is the purchase of an old fishing cottage, 2 or 3 units. We saw the purchase of a oceanfront home at 1.5 that had to be completely demolished, $2 million invested, took it to 3.5, and then resold upon completion for 6.2. So if you take a 1.5 plus 2, sell it for 6.2, should it not have $1,000 developmental impact fee?
I'll go on record and say absolutely.
Yeah, I think so too.
And I build, develop, engineer, absolutely.
So those are all the conversations, but what we're then saying is, if we did 78 new constructions this past 12 months, it's $78,000.
You still ain't got enough to buy that lot.
So now you gotta think it's gonna take you 10 years to buy one lot, and that's currently for sale today at $419.
Appreciation.
And by then you got 400 hot spots.
And I wouldn't say that as the only method. I'm thinking,
We're rolling out ideas here.
As-
We've covered all of these ideas, and I wanna share with you that those are the real numbers. So if it was $1,000 impact fee, it's 78 new construction rebuilds on average per year. So then what you wanna talk about is, do you implement a $100 per year fee per developed lot, which is 6,500 lots?
Well, that's what we had in Smallsboro, was enterprise fund.
Yep.
We charged, so much for residential annually, so much for commercial annually. Obviously, the commercial was a little bit high, well, not a little bit, it was higher.
Substantial.
Yeah, so
Because
it
they paid for work.
subsidized the residential side of things. But that's what, they use those funds to maintain the drainage system that we were able to map.
These have been mechanisms in position since the onset of phase 2, since the onset
Yeah.
of the rollouts in the 90s. We've never adopted it here. So then the hairy, carry, scary part of that is, if you were to roll that out, then what's thrown back at you immediately is, you're charging me, you must fix it. And so there's no concept that there's gonna take time to build up reserves to get to that. And then if you have a hit list, why am I not on the top of the hit list?
Right.
So all of this becomes that psychological warfare, because we applied for and received $9.8 million in grant funding, dedicated almost $5 million of it to stormwater infrastructure improvements. And then it was, why am I not at the top? You're taking too long. And so working through all that, but round numbers, 78 to 80 units per year on average over the course of the last 60 months. Roughly 6,500 developed parcels, so then you can use that as an aggregate, as a multiplier, whether you charge them $10 a year, $25 a year, $100 a year. Impact fee at roughly $1,000. So those were all conversations that have been had. This is a public meeting. I am not going to say anything detrimental or negative, but I have to say that the development community was less than receptive to some of the ideas that had lesser of a financial impact the last time this team met.
I'm somewhat resistant.
That's the polite, politically correct way to say that.
Matt, is there a way, and I don't know this legally, instead of condemning a property and purchasing it, is there a way of forcing, for instance here, you go to the current property owners to force them to be able to purchase a 20-foot easement? I don't know that there is, but is there a way?
No, so there's basically fair market purchase outright, agreement notification, or condemnation. To my knowledge and my experience, there's no mechanism in between. And so,
Because we couldn't take 20 foot because it'd be non-conforming. I believe those lots would both would be creating non-conforming lots.
I have to grab this to the mayor, but I will say to you this, stand by. The solution is not necessarily taking more or creating more. It's even just having the tenacity to ditch what exists and to reestablish what was a previous ditch. Because if George was here, he would tell you how we reestablished the ditch past him, and it worked great, did it not?
Yeah.
But his neighbor, politely to say, almost lost his mind,
Because
but
it
it was in the right
It was in the right
way. It wasn't anything to do with, we didn't do a taking.
Yes.
And that was just doing maintenance.
this
And you're gonna get-
is
you're
in
gonna-
the right of way.
and that's the thing, you're gonna get it.
And
It's the right of
you're gonna
way,
get it right
but
here.
in everybody's
or-
mind, until the road, they mow that grass.
Yeah, you're gonna get it either from people having less accessibility to their property due to flooding, or you're gonna get it from people not being able to mow flat. And I mean, there's a reason development all across every state I've had any particular development experience with follows a typical, their Department of Transportation cross-section with a shoulder and roadside ditch. And
Yeah.
that's what prevents water standing on the road. Water might stand in the ditch, but that's safety and every other reason why it's better to let it stand in the ditch versus stand in the road.
Yeah, it's in the ditch, not on property, not on the road, and that's that storage area.
And that would be a solution on Doe, on Fawn Drive, around that curve. It's still 8 inches deep in there. And that would be a solution if you could put a swale in the front around that curve. That water would now be in the ditch and not in the roadway. It's not that it wasn't passable, but they couldn't deliver mail because of the post office's standards on you can't drive through water, you might get electrocuted. So, and that's not a huge inconvenience, but that's one option on that particular spot. Now, Doe has probably got close to a foot on it down around that curve, the same curve on the opposite side. I'm not sure there's enough room over there to make that type of an approach.
Well, and keep in mind, that particular incident, that's a 7-inch event.
Oh, yeah.
If we're looking at these generic day-to-day possibilities in the 2-inch cycle, that seems to be that rule of thumb, the 1.5 to 2 inches, well, what did we figure out
It's gonna capture 94, on average, 94 to 96% of all rainfalls expected in a year, based on NOAA's rainfall data that's readily accessible online. You always have these outliers, but 90, that's the reason, like, NCDEQ, that's why the general statute in North Carolina, outside the coastal area, is 1 inch for stormwater treatment and collection. When you come into coastal Carolina, it's 1.5 inches, and how you design for that rainstorm is different in different hydrologic areas. But really, the 1.5 to 2 inch storm will accept 90 somewhere, say 92 to 95% of all rainfalls expected in a year. So it becomes a factor of, how much more you get on a curve that, you go 1 inch more, it doesn't gain you anything. You have to go a mile more to gain any actual,
Right.
relief.
So that goes into something on these day-to-day incidences, if we can establish, and, Matt's talked about this in previous meetings, you have just that ditch on these roads and try to give somewhere for that stormwater to flow to and just contain. That will help out dramatically on a day-to-day basis. It'll capture some of these deluge events, but, again, you look at that little bit of capacity is no longer on the road, it's in that ditch.
And I think, what we're saying ditch and what's being heard is a complete different animal. We're not talking about a 24 or 36 inch V-cut
It's
ditch.
talking about,
It could even, like, if you look at, I dare say, 80% of the roads in Emerald Isle, the shoulder is 1 inch above the asphalt. So you know, if you'll watch DOT across the state, they'll come in with a motor grader and lay the motor grader on the asphalt and tilt that blade overboard and just run. And they cut that 1.5 to 2 inches, because what happens at the end of our bridge right now, when you go across it, they're subject to hydroplane because the dirt has built up, the sediment has built up, and it's ponded, you know, 2 or 3 inches of water. It's because the edge of pavement is like that. If we would just take a motor grader and lay that blade over and just cut
Down the
6 foot
street.
off and create a swell, it can still be mowed, it's no problem. But it just gets the water off of that road, because it's not gonna go through that asphalt until there's a pothole, and then it becomes another maintenance problem.
Yep.
But it's gonna sit on that. But if it sits on the dirt, you have uptake, you have evapotranspiration, you have a bunch of methods that will allow for the water to leave, whether it's infiltration or uptake or what have you. So it's really there's a lot of factors that are going on that could be alleviated without spending and without, you know, just researching the world here, just some small things that could be done. It's inside of our right of way.
Yeah.
You know, it might not make everybody happy, but I mean, we could shape that off the road 3 or 4 feet and then tie back up in a 5 to 1, never be in anybody's property.
So to give everybody visualization of the extent of the right of way, we usually use these power poles as markers. So anything from here to here is usually where we could create those semi-resolves to try to dissipate some of that stormwater. So we have the right, with the ownership of the Piney Street right of way, that can be done. But like Matt said, when
We start going down the street with that motor grader. That guy where that Jeep's parked and the guy on the other side, all he's gonna be worried about is his grass.
And tell the cable company to be ready.
Well, no, so even the cable company, you do the locates, and that avoids cutting cable lines and all that. It still happens, we all
Oh, yeah.
know that. But there's supposed to be protection measures, but you go into the property issues, and like you said, you know, the clearing of the ditch further on down on Emerald Drive, one of the property owners just lost their minds. I mean, was just belligerent, because he used to have a flat property, yeah, it flows great, and the town came back and did,
Swale.
well, the DOT did the swell, but the town came back and put sod in that swell, so it's less likely to scar everywhere. Now you go on the other side of East Landing where it dumps out. DOT did that too and did not put any sod in there, so you can see scarring all over the place. But it's diverting a lot of that stormwater that was current, you know, because I mean the road is in that area. You stand on property on the north side of Emerald Drive, and the road is like this.
It's super elevated.
Yeah, so it's the water's going to go where gravity's going to take it, and just creating that simple swell to take it away helped out, but not without just concerns from property owners, and we understand that too. That's the juggling match that we do as public officials, is balancing everybody's desires.
Lack of empathy
You know,
and understanding. That's what it is. It's nobody wants to look at their neighbor and go, "Hey man, I get your flooding. Yeah, this will help you out a little bit." That's the problem.
yeah.
I know, that's where I'm at now. The backyard that I have takes on property from every surrounding property around it, to include the Coast Guard station.
Mhm.
And it's gotten worse because they cleared a lot that used to retain a bunch of water a couple houses down, and, you know, elevated it up, built a house, now more water runs. The guy across our street has water underneath his house right now. So the town did come and they put a swale in front of my house, the neighbor next door, and then the neighbor down, and you know, there was no public information, and that's the point I was gonna make, is whatever you do, the town's gotta lead with here's what we're doing and why we're doing it. So I had one neighbor that I'll never talk to again, and I could really care less because she doesn't have a water problem, but all the water runs onto my property. And I'm not mad at anyone at the town level or anything. Last year when I came and talked with Matt, my wife and I recognized that our backyard area is gonna fill with water. We're fine with that. We just don't want it to overfill to the point where, our drain field for our septic system is covered, or, it's up on our house. But I mean, it's over knee deep in my backyard right now. So I don't have a problem if we dig a ditch in front of my house, if it prevents that, although they're gonna have to dig a bunch of other ditches in other places. But I do think, there's a start now on the hot spots, to get after some of this. And I was listening to the minutes, I think, from the August meeting, and you guys were talking about, I think it might have been your voice, so you better watch out if you get voice printed on this, because it'll attribute your comments. But the A, B, and C of in the road, on the property, in the house, or under the house. There's also the on the septic field that I think has to factor in, because pretty much the entire town's on septic, and your house is inhabitable if that's flooded over for the drain field. But I don't have a problem with the town showing up to work in my area and figure it out. The right of way belongs to the town. I don't have a problem with that. But you're right, there are people that do, and I think it's just a matter of, well, you were informed and sorry you feel that way, for what it's worth.
Don't worry, guys, I'll fill those calls.
Well, you don't even have to have flooded over top of your ground level to make your septic system
True.
not work, because
True.
ours is not working. And there's no surface water on our lot. Now, it's casual water is defined in the golf course, but we're used to that. We didn't build, but the house was built in the low spot. My in-laws bought it and they gave it to us. It's what it is. We live there full time. The biggest concern that we have in the whole process is that we're borrowing water from the Doe pumps into the Deerhorn Drive pump, which when it pumps, when it's pumping and functioning properly, and we don't lose power, it does a pretty good job keeping the water table down. The septic systems aren't impacted. But the problem is Doe pumps into us, and the pumps can't keep up. So now we're borrowing. They got their problems with groundwater. They bought their homes over there. They built their homes over there. We got ours over here. It's not right in my mind's eye to pump their water into us, and our pumps can't handle it. So our groundwater builds up faster because the pumps can't keep up. And that is my problem in a nutshell. Don't drive the pond on Deerhorn, because it has ramifications to us. Yeah, they got their problems, but the same I was told, it's our house. That's our problem. It's inherent in our lot. Don't give us their problem. And that's my problem.
And I certainly understand that, and it's the whole relay is to try to get it out, and it seems like where you're at is just an older pump that's needing replacement, and I just don't know where it is.
It was that pond was put in after they bought the house. There was a lot of stuff going on when Frank Rush was here.
Gotcha.
And then where does the pump go from your problem? It goes from Doe to you to where?
It goes from Doe to us to, I guess, what you call Archer's Creek. I don't know the terminology, but it goes across
No.
Coast Guard
Yeah, it goes
and down to
river.
some,
Samuel Woods.
Probably
the woods,
Emerald
yeah.
I was
is that Emerald Woods?
Yeah,
Okay.
that big old recreation
Yes.
lot that we have.
Yes.
So yeah, that couples as a stormwater retention area on some of it, and
And that, I guess that's where we pump to. That's,
yeah.
but, it's not big enough, and you can't do anything in a storm. I understand it. I don't have any complaints about, when you get 24 inches of rain in 36 hours and the electricity goes out, God bless, we're gonna get 18 inches of water under our house.
Yeah.
but don't pump the water from another area into our area when our area can't get rid of it. That's not right, and that's my problem.
Understood, and I'm sure you've had that similar conversation with Matt on.
Oh, a couple times.
Every time it rains more, yeah.
No, you know, it's, we made improvements, they've got the dollars in, so it's not Ray calling to tell them that the pumps aren't working at 3 o'clock in the morning. And emergency generator's gonna get set, and town's doing everything they can.
Yeah.
Okay? They got an EOP that says when the pumps aren't keeping up, they're gonna shut off Doe. But this event that just happened was the first time they shut off Doe pumping into us. We were always told, well, Doe wasn't flooding and you got plenty of room. It's the ripple effect. Yeah, we got more volume than we can hold, but that's also impacting our septic. If the pumps can't keep up, you're causing me to where I can't inhabit my home.
Understood.
And it's not frequent enough for you to buy me out. You'd have to fight my wife off for that.
Don't want to do the business.
You know, I'm good.
Any other, because I think the next one is just asking this committee if there's more information other than what we've already discussed and bringing to you that staff needs to bring, and then we talk about the schedule of meetings. So, I mean, we got plenty of time. It's only 4 o'clock. We got time to debate if there's a need to. So,
Yeah, I think the information we have from what we asked for last meeting that I can remember is present, just, with updates that are coming.
yeah.
I think really we've got some good points, really seeing for the members that aren't familiar with development, when they see these photos and start to actually see what's happening,
Yeah.
I feel it's gonna be a little bit more clear to try to find a path forward, if there is a path forward that can be found, with development regulations and how to prevent such catastrophes from happening.
Yeah.
On an ordinance side of things happen without getting approved,
Yeah.
but from an ordinance side of things, I think, some of these hot spots, when we do our field trip, I think that'll help
Yeah.
kind of clear up some of the fogginess.
Because, yeah, I mean, so Chris's house is next door.
Yeah, that's AD.
Mitchell's,
Mitchell
and
is
so
where
and
the blue is.
that always was a hole.
That was a whole.
That was
thing.
always a hole.
Now, one thing that we did do that I feel was a good development practice, the reason we didn't cut that hill down right there where that light pole is, because when we had the water located, it was less than 36 inches, so we couldn't lower it.
Because I see your retaining wall right there, right?
That's
Or is that AB's
Yeah,
retaining
that's-
wall?
That's the north property, for folks
Right.
that don't know who we're talking about. This is the north property. When we built this lot, which is the direct adjacent, the retaining wall we put in was like 20, it was 15 or 17 feet off the property line. It's like 20 feet away from his. And it was a portion of our natural area. And
Right.
it has a natural grade from that elevation right there, which is about the same elevation as the road. It would fall from that point to the back of the lot. Now, from where it goes from the back of the lot would be a problem, because the neighbor behind us built a retaining wall and built that moat for himself there. But
Yeah.
from
For himself.
for himself, when it gets in that property, it's not going out.
Right.
But this water, I would think if the town approached these two, and as Matt said, would come up with the funding to drop that water line,
Mm-hmm.
I would feel from here to that street light is no problem. We have every right as a town to create a V section there. I feel it would possibly behoove the two property owners to allow the town to go ahead and cut the swell in. I don't think it's gonna stop this, but it would stop anything greater than that elevation, because that edge of pavement elevation V notch down and out just for this one circumstance.
I think it would help a lot because you'd have momentum. I mean, you can see that truck sitting there is going uphill, so
Absolutely.
water is already going to have momentum and direction. That
So
even
if it dries up, we'll go out there. If you'll ride by there,
Yep.
you'll see where all the sediment deposition is.
Mhm.
It's north of AB's driveway. So that's the low point, like where you had that photo from 20 years
So
ago.
if you had a straw right there, sucking it out back the other
Yeah.
direction,
So you'll have a little bit of inundation, But
Right.
you wouldn't get that in this property owner's
No.
house.
Cause you definitely have momentum pushing
It would go out,
everything that
yeah.
way.
You might have that 6 inches in the water, but you wouldn't get to that 18.
Right.
But I think that could be something
Well-
that possibly could be worked out on that one circumstance.
And the bad thing about it is because my dad's built a ton over here and our houses we grew up in, you know, people were trying to build not for the 2 inch. You're trying to build for that one time. You know what I mean? If you're building a house on the sound, you're trying to build where's the highest the water's ever been.
Yeah.
Where's the water? Where's the highest point it's ever been? Because every house, you know, we built that first one that's right on Canal, you know, on Archer's Creek. That one flooded. We had 18 inches of water. I forget what storm it is. Had to redo the whole downstairs. So when we decided to build on the lot next door, what do? Make sure we get it higher than that 18 inches. So that's the bad thing, you know. You got
It's
people.
hard to leave, you know, and I'm gonna touch on a touchy subject here, but it's hard with a 12,000 square foot lot to build it up to a safe level for, you know, not all developers and builders are evil and they don't do it for the wrong reasons. When we build up a house, it's not because, every time it's not because we want it high, it's because the person I sell to, I want them to be dry.
Right.
You know, and when you have a 12,000 square foot lot, it's hard to build the lot up with setbacks from septic that you have to have and all that, and the natural area to leave some lot grading that'll give positive drainage away. And it's difficult to do, you know, the state required in some areas when you have cross lot drainage, the 3 lots, the unwritten rule, you know, that you have cross lot, you have swales on the property line, it's hard to incorporate that with these smaller lots with 35% with a 1,500 square foot septic system, with even a 1,400 square foot house footprint and a driveway. You start adding everything together where there's something that gotta get cut. And unfortunately, just in the 10 years I've been down here developing and building and seeing things, the grading is what gets left behind.
Right.
And that's where we're at. It's not necessarily that we're,
Now it's
Add
flat
in
everything.
stormwater.
Put a wall.
yeah, exactly.
So
Just
the
that we're-
development's causing the problem.
Not
Not necessarily.
That's what he said.
There's always been a problem. It's like I say, you know, when you speak about Coast Guard, I think I'm 43 years old. I can 5 years old, right there in not Coast Guard, Reed Drive. That big puddle by Blue Water, man, I used to stand there and give people thumbs up to hit the gas, come by as fast as they can and spray. It's because it's always been this deep after a bad storm. So water table has a lot to do with it. Now the question is, because of the water table, what can you look at somebody and say that's had a lot over here? You can't do that. Well, 10 years ago he did it. 5 years ago he did it. No one was concerned at that point of what he did was going to impact. The only reason he was allowed to do that is because I didn't build first. And that's where you get into a tricky situation. That's why understanding from people is about
Weren't there standards that controlled how you go about and do all these things back in the day? I mean, this 35% natural area on a lot, I can show you five houses in my development where the developers just came in and leveled them. Where's the enforcement? Where's the accountability? Where's the repercussions?
Yeah, I would.
You've created an area, you've created a situation where the developers, the builders have come in and gone, that's good. Next thing you know, all that water's coming out into the street, into the low spots. And the town has not enforced the guidelines that they have available. The builders have not been held accountable. There's been no repercussions. There's been no consequences. Tell a builder that wouldn't build the house across the street from us, when they brought in all the dirt and leveled the lot, and they may have a 10% natural area, tell the builder, go back 3 years, pull that guy's business and say, oh, by the way, you screwed up, sorry it took us so long to get to you. Fix it. It's not the people that bought the house, it's not their fault. The builders are supposed to follow the rules, it's not the owners. The builders are supposed to follow the rules.
Builders are supposed to follow the
And
rules.
when they
The
don't-
enforcers are supposed to enforce the rules. And over the
Who are the
course
enforcers?
of over 40 years, you've got different.
Well,
You know, you got.
we were talking about the vegetation rule, and I can tell you that lot that we pointed out, like they cleared it. I mean, there was no, like, if they got 10%, that would have been like something. But that's pretty much common of the empty lots that have been developed in the area since we've lived here in the
And
last 5 years.
they're all the less favorable lots right now. So
Yeah.
they're the ones that have bad contours, hard
Right.
to build on. Sorry, they're hard to build on. The people that wanna build them, these McMansions they're building next to us, they could have accommodated that much better than what they've done.
So I'll speak for the town and what they've done recently in preventing that from happening is getting on at the very front end and changing the flow chart of how you get a permit and how that's addressed, because I know I've seen it too, and I stake my 35% and I don't touch it. And it really upsets me when I have to follow the rules and others don't, because not only does it cause you guys problems, and me as a homeowner that lives here, it's also what's called unfair development practice. And if one's clearing 80% of his lot, that means the homeowner that moves in generally can use 80% of their cleared lot versus 65% that those of the builders that follow the rules.
Nice
So
pool in the back, nice pool in the backyard.
just as upset, but just because they clear, I use this all the time, and people look at me like cross-eyed. You know, my lots, I clear 100% of the lot that I clear. And I'm not a surveyor, so, and I would imagine most surveyors can't ride by a lot and look at it and go, yep, they did 35% natural area, because some of these lots are wider and deeper and abnormally shaped. You know, the 35% natural area might not be very evident.
As far as to the human
To the
eye.
eye.
Well, that's
But
funny.
if-
In a lot of places.
But that's-
And that's why the
the-
town's making us stake them, and then when we stake it, they won't give us a permit until the town goes out and inspects. They write the permit, and now we've gone to another level, that after you clear and you put in your silt fence and your clearing mechanisms, your, construction entrance and all that, we as a building, group are supposed to call the town again to come back out and re-inspect. So the town understands there's been some over-clearing and things in the last 15 years, but we can't retroactively enforce things.
But is that the current practice?
That is the current practice. That is today's current practice.
Okay.
Well, okay, but you.
Because it wasn't even 6 months ago, so.
No, so I'll be the one that's gonna intercede and say respectfully, politely, professionally, that's actually not the fact. And so the fact is this: you design a site plan. Did you put 35% on every one you've turned in?
Yes, on mine, absolutely.
This is true real time, which is why it's great easier. All 26 of these builds go out, get built. I had the former town planner file a complaint, right? We pull those 26 down. Not a single violation in the 26, recall? The problem is it was perception from the street, and dominantly a lot of these were built on Sound Drive. So we went to school, we got drone pilot license, 107A pilot license. We're flying a majority of these. If you took this piece of paper, did this today, let's just say for the sake of this argument, it is 10,000 square feet. This is what I did last time. I actually used 3 napkins in this room with the last. So if you have the select the size, this is just in general for all the human beings in here. That's roughly a third, a third, a third.
Mhm.
So if I'm the engineer and I do this, 35%, nailed it, okay? That means this other 65%, I can bulldoze all of it. 100% of it, is that accurate or
That
inaccurate?
is accurate.
So this is a Sound Drive lot. Here is the edge of the land, and here's all the marsh grass.
Marsh grass is
Does
considered
this count, Chris?
Yes, it does.
Okay,
35%.
So there you go. That has all happened. That has happened and happened and happened and happened. So then, in this room, the group said, well, I don't like that. I think that they should have to keep a buffer, and we talked about a 10-foot buffer. And then we said we should have a 10-foot buffer there, and how much, what's the current setback from the road? Sound Drive.
30.
Well, oh my God, I can't build inside of that. You're crazy. 410 Wild Cherry, if Billy was here, we'd use his 410 lot. There was issues there. 330 Live Oak, we have a plan. We go to Live Oak. What percentage of land was cleared at 330 Live Oak?
it went from the 35% reservation to roughly about 16%.
Does that look like 5 feet?
There is no side setback.
The-
Hold on,
the-
just
okay.
wait. So, we have a person that knows what they're doing, a site plan that's in position, and now 17% is remaining. That's today, that's literally
Right now.
September 19th. When did we have the site visit? Should be an easy answer for you, because it was 30 days ago today. Has anything happened?
I've been
Are there new
told-
trees there? Yes or no?
Not that I've seen.
Okay, so we have a violation. What is your expectation of revegetation? This is serious, this is real time for this team. We found out on the 19th when we went there that they overcut. We wrote them up. That's one lot. What's your realistic expectation?
Per the ordinance.
The ordinance says 60 days.
Undeveloped, oh, you're talking about timeline.
Ordinance says 60 days. Now the question is 60 days from when? Is it 60 days from the day we went, which would have been 60 days from the 19th of August? Is it 60 days from this last email that was sent yesterday? Or is it 60 days from CO?
Well,
That's what- that's-
COs, they've already got it. They're already good at CO, so you've done past your time now.
So legal-
60 days.
Legal said 60 days from CO,
60 said, 6, okay.
and I disagree with that.
So I'm gonna
60
also,
Because how do you punish? The
Why?
the CO is what gives you the
CO
validation
says,
to
"Get out
hold
of jail
someone.
free, go skip, you got $200.
Nah,
now, one thing
So
I
that's
will
something
point
that
out,
is-
as we talk about department transitions, we've started doing CO visits also. And part of that CO visit is to re-inspect a natural area.
right.
And we have withheld plenty
Mm-hmm.
of COs in this short period of time because of that, to get things reestablished. We do not give the county the green light to issue a CO until everything's covered.
Because that's
Stormwater
the
certification.
only card you have.
Yeah.
That's the only thing you have.
Yeah.
But I have to
You-
pause the conversation here to boil everybody down, bring the temperature in the room down and say this. Did we ever accept a plan from you that showed less than 35%?
Never.
No, and he always does it.
Yeah.
You issue the permit based on the plan,
Correct.
right? We're not physically there when they're running the dozer or the tree or the chainsaw. So, unless you put a physical site monitoring, construction management monitor on every single site, they are required to follow the plan. Let's use 330 Live Oak. They made an error, they didn't follow the plan. They cut more and they installed a new retaining wall that's not on the plan. We're trying to get that. So there's a revegetation plan that takes it exactly back to 35%, to the actual square foot,
Okay.
to a lot that was 100% vegetated prior to disturbance. Now, they're gonna replant. It's gonna take a period of time to replant. It's gonna take a period of time for the trees to get any kind of maturity. This group has to answer the question. We didn't do anything wrong. The contractor or developer did the wrong. This room argued 2 years ago about how to find them. Steve Finch was sitting where Greg's sitting, and Floyd Messer was sitting where you're sitting. The question was, is it $10,000 a tree? It boiled down to $1,000 a tree. So now we're getting ready to find the person at 330 Live Oak. Is it $1,000 per tree?
Yes.
Mature tree that was taken down.
Okay, if I cut down a tree, in my yard right now, one tree, what's it gonna cost me?
Illegally cuts down a live tree.
If I go illegally cut down a lot, it's $1,000, right? So if I cut down 5 of them, it's $5,000.
So in the legal review, the way the code, that portion of the code is written is, it's $1,000 per tree if it's not replanted in that 60 day.
Period.
Okay, but
It can be read either way, and I want to point out for everyone in this room, there was legal minds involved, attorneys involved, everything. It was intended to be a penalty, a stopgap penalty. So if Ray cut a tree, we hit him with a $1,000 fine. It wasn't intended, well, go cut your tree, but if you don't plant a new one.
Either one.
It was worded as such, but it's being interpreted.
To me, violating the 35% is going to be is a lot worse than my Aunt Mabel down here cutting down a tree in her front yard without permission. So you've got, as a builder,
Yeah.
if a town looked at you and said, dude, you're in violations, and they had something, because like you say, how long does it take to replant to the 35% vegetation? If you broke the rule and the town looked at you and said, cool deal, dude, $20,000 fine, now.
You're not gonna do it again.
Yeah,
No,
it'll
no,
clean
not
itself
not
up.
even, Pete, you're not gonna do it again, but even if you didn't wanna be that guy that just said 20,000, but you're taking, because of time, you're losing the power of your CO. 20,000, but it goes into contingency. When you can show us you've planted this 35% back and that you've conformed this lot back to compliance, you get your 20 grand
There's no
back.
penalty. And there's no repercussion. If you tell your kid, don't do that, I'm gonna take away your dessert, and the kid does it, and you say, oh, okay, you can't have your dessert right now, but come back in an hour, you can have your dessert. That kid hasn't learned a lesson. Builders don't learn a lesson. They look at it and say, if I do this, I'm gonna get slapped on the wrist. In 4 or 5 years, I'm gonna get my money back. You're not gonna demotivate them from doing things that they know they're not supposed to do. That's the accountability. That's the repercussion.
But if the CEO's the mom coming home and she doesn't have the same idea as you do, and the mom comes in and just lets him off the punishment you just gave him, you still lose
You're
everything.
penalizing
So
the
there's a
owner for
lot
the
of things
CO
here.
type thing, which I don't disagree with you, because the owner and the builder have a relationship.
Right.
Okay.
They're in partnership.
You're right. But the owner's not the one that told that builder to go out there where he's supposed to stay 5 foot off the building, and he's 10 feet out into the, away from the building, and because he had to run a ditch that he didn't do in the right sequence, and now he's trapped. All right? Now that builder has knowingly broke the rule,
Mhm.
and he's laughing in the town's face because nothing's going to happen. And you're not gonna change that until you hit the builder in the wallet.
So
That's a cost the
this
builder has to absorb, not the
conversation-
owner.
This conversation's critical, it's been had, so then you have to talk through what's currently on the books today. This group has to make any recommendation for changes, but I am coming back to our previous conversation. It's not that the town didn't stop or didn't penalize someone.
Mhm.
I'm telling you, we have. We have a live case today. We talked about it at the last stormwater meeting. So now we have it. We've noticed it. It's been 30 days today. What is your expectation for remediation? And I agree with you, Josh. You can't issue a CO because you can't guarantee it will be done.
Right.
So then the builders say to us, well, if we did this and you force us to plant in July, it's not gonna take. We've had this repetitively. But again, the problem that we say is, we didn't speed through the school zone. We didn't cut the trees, you did it,
Man,
Yeah.
right?
and what about a timeline? Stop work order.
We've done it.
Well, that right there,
Stop
that
work order. That's the
really.
only- I'm a builder down
You only
there.
do it
That
once.
is- That is the
Okay.
only, and I
I
know
don't
it's
wanna
gonna
be
be hard.
ugly.
Go for it.
When we issued the stop work order on Pinto, what happened? You were there, what happened?
What happened?
Keep going.
Kept going?
It was Mike
Mhm.
who made field changes, deviated from his design engineer plan, and we issued the stop work order.
And he didn't stop. Now where do you
Well,
go?
no, he called Jason, and Jason called me, and I just want you to be honest about how this goes. That's what happened.
Is that the good old boy network?
It's just pissed off, pardon me, it's mad people. And then Ricky Taylor was the one forced to install the remediated activity. And we had it because we had an engineer review it, we went through conversations, the initial design was right. And that's where the neighbor's getting flooded. And so we worked through, we've had these real life examples with good designs brought forward. And unless we, and this is where we said, we just got done interviewing, we have 3 people. We're gonna keep Tony up front full-time, that's today's conversation, right? So Tony's been tremendous. So it's gonna
Right.
be Tony grabbing the calls, Greg helping support, and Chris. It's 3 people.
It's not a lot.
What do you want is your level of expectation, certification? We either need to have a post-foundation inspection with a certified survey meets and bounds on that foundation to make sure it was put where it belongs,
Okay, and that's what me and you talked about as far as how did the county miss the flip of the house?
right? And what I wanna tell you is, our staff member at the time, who was an inspector from Cary, signed off, apparently. There was an email that said, looks good, cause I went to the county and unearthed that.
Gotcha.
Jeff Hall said, looks good. So Jeff had been physically to the site. I don't know if he had the site plan, his iPad with him. He had all the tools,
Right. He
but
just
the
messed
house
up.
was completely turned. The driveway went from the left to the right side. When I showed up with the site plan and construction's done and there's a flooding issue in the road, I'm like, oh man.
The garage is on the wrong side.
So with all of that happen, and then keep in mind, I'm the one that the phone calls come to. Just now, when I stepped out, it is Lena and Jason Fleener of 112 Doe giving me hell, said that they looked at the map, they're the only people in Emerald Isle that don't have a pump in their front yard, they want the water out now. And I said, well, I stepped outside, I'm soaking wet. I said, I'm in the meeting now, we could potentially call you back. But they emailed Jason forwarded it to me this morning at 10 to 7, and I answered it, and they're still holding water. But I say all that, and I'm not putting him on the spot, what was your request for us with the Doe Drive pump?
Shut it down, don't borrow trouble.
So if we don't shut down the Doe Drive pump, what happens to you?
Water level rises, my septic system floods out.
So then now she's mad that water's in her front yard. And she said, I have septic, what are you gonna do about it? I don't think you've
Bring it
done
over to
it.
my house.
She said, well, she said, why don't you bring your group to my house right now and take a field trip? I said, yes, ma'am, I'm gonna step back in and try not to disrupt the meeting. And that was at 4:10. So I'm
And see,
saying-
that's the problem.
but
She
I'm-
doesn't understand that,
Most
okay, you want me to
people-
take the
most
water
people
out of your
don't.
yard and put it in his yard.
Most
Like,
people don't.
1,000 years storm event.
exactly. I mean, that's the bad thing, man.
Yeah,
It's
expectations is very
understanding.
difficult.
Yes.
It's hard to set levels of expectation in this space with people focused on the problem.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So where are we in your agenda? Where do you wanna go? I mean, seriously.
I just don't want your job, bro. I'm
It's
good.
not, it's overly complicated.
I wouldn't last a day.
It's extremely complicated and very little grace in either chair. Is that an accurate?
That is very
You sat in this chair, I sat in that chair, I know what it's like. He knows what this is like.
Mm.
There's very little grace.
I sympathize with you, Matt.
Oh, really?
I've only got 300 homes that I deal with in Land's End, and I get the same thing that you're getting from the whole town. So I feel sorry for you.
And I think we struck a major win when we got the grant to help potentially diffuse, remove, and address the water coming out of Land's End. And Land's End, you're probably aware of it, but there's complaints about Land's End all the time. All Emerald Isle does is bend over backwards for Land's End. We're catering to Land's End. That's not true. Land's End has invested tens of thousands of dollars,
Hundreds.
done pump work, line work. They have done a tremendous job trying to protect their investment, and is a good partner to us. If we turn that pump system and run that water to a dune infiltration solution, which I'm convinced has been very effective in other coastal communities, will be extremely effective for them, 95 out of 100 events, that system's gonna hold it.
Right.
And then we wanted to make sure, right, because we met as a team with their group, what happens when the 1 in 10,000 year event occurs and it overruns their dune system? Are we still gonna have the dual capacity to alternatively pump back to EI Woods? And I said, you know, when that happens, we're probably gonna be in a big pickle, right?
Yeah.
So, but we have to make
Very.
sure we have solutions. And so what we have done is all of our standing 7 permanent pump stations are being standardized. All of them are having brand new generators at 30 kW installed with a minimum of 500 to an upsized tank to 1,000 gallons. What's coming back to you is gonna be a request for $15,780 and ramps for the hoses, because if not, we're getting yelled at by Cape Emerald, we weren't out there fast enough. We didn't have enough material, so if we would have moved the pump from Island Circle to them, which we ended up putting out yesterday, I had to physically put a human being there 24 hours a day to shut the pump off when you drove over the line, because we didn't have the $7,800 ramps to go there. Because we had the ramps at Island Circle, and I said to Joe, I'm physically and mentally exhausted by this. I want a run list for the next board meeting, and I am gonna stand up in public and say, we need $200 and X thousand for these minimum items to produce the minimum that you wanted done,
Right.
because you keep asking, right? So it's $30,000 additional pumps, it's this, it's that, so we know what it is, but like Ethan keeps saying, you can engineer to what level are you gonna be able to tell this poor woman, ma'am, you bought at the coast, it's going to go away.
Yeah.
We're spending hundreds of thousands of dollars doing a circle that we're never gonna get out from.
There's nowhere to pump it.
There's nowhere to pump it. We're spending resources and time and money wasted. $200,000, ask him, to alleviate 2 to 3 days worth of water. If we just held the money and waited 3 days, it would be gone.
Right.
See it's hard as a taxpayer, off of this committee, but as a taxpayer, if we're not having real property damage or access problems for safety, EMS, fire, that is a problem.
And
I
that's
agree
what
100%.
that's what we shared with
Where we
Ray,
have
is when
safety
you
issues.
shut down Doe, we can't traverse the road, the fire truck, EMS, police car can't get there. And so that's why we're having these serious conversations of very interested people about how do you ingress, egress. And then it becomes a conversation of where are you moving the water? Because once we finally, everybody did a tremendous job Tuesday, getting permission from the gentleman out of town. Now that we're moving the water there, we're taking that down like 2 inches an hour. And that whole site's taking it, back to your point. What do you think, and then if you go down Coast Guard and you know where Doc Holliday's house is, it's the lot directly left. What do you think that lot is worth today? It's vacant. How much?
Is it on, what road is it?
It's,
No,
it's
it's,
at
yeah,
the, it's at the
front
triangulated point of Inlet, Windtree, and Coast Guard, so it's technically on Windtree.
Yeah.
750.
No.
Is it oceanfront?
Yes.
Oh, whoa,
That's what I
yeah.
was asking.
Yeah, ocean
Yeah.
front.
Oceanfront?
Oceanfront.
Well, I can tell you, I just paid 1.6 for oceanfront.
I was gonna say
I would like to
1.5.
pump to there, and I'm being serious. We need to pump to there.
I would rather
And
have
that's not gonna
funds go
happen,
to-
right?
that as a permanent fix than continually spending money, trying to alleviate 1-2 daisies, you know what I'm saying, like,
100%. So here's a big blow your mind out solution. Aaron, Mullish, Ryan, the shellfish person is tremendous. Like she is like 1 in 10,000. Working through this whole conversation with her, I said, Aaron, where can we move this to? She goes, honest to gosh, what you should be doing is not pumping anything to EI Woods and pumping all that to the point, don't you think?
You're not gonna satisfy everybody, so what solution's gonna piss off the least amount of people?
It's not that, it's what's the right solution, because it's probably okay to piss off people if you do the right thing. And the right
I like
thing
that.
is, if we could get that land from Paxson, and you could move the water into an area that's not going to negatively hurt the environment, the people, and it moves it from the developed area to the new sandy 1,000 meter area we created by dredging that inlet, and let it dissipate, and it'll be good.
What happens when the storm comes in and that inlet's up against those houses again? Because
No, walk through that.
because
What is
it's happened.
But what's the reality of that? So if you go to the point and you pull down all the storms, including Florence, which is the worst on record, that didn't happen in 18. We now have, with the engineered structure, and that's where Roy, I think, keeps talking about a jetty and or conversation. The
That's
jetty's a bad idea from an
terrible.
environmental
If it might help something here, it's gonna hurt something somewhere else.
It's gonna have the negative impact, but you have the sandy dune that you can put a 6-foot box in, pump the water to in cells, and Greg knows all about it because we've researched this to the nines. It will work, and it's gonna clean the water before it gets into the water stuff, the subsurface water, and it is environmentally 100 times better than direct discharge and overlaying it over the 50 feet. So what you're saying is we need to build this giant septic system down near the point, so all the people on the west end, we can move that water to, because it used to naturally go through the sandy soil, but we built on it, we're living on it. That, I think, is the ultimate long-term solution.
And what is Paxton's lot worth right now?
She tried to give it to us, that's a whole nother conversation we'll have out here. That is where we were very close. It was a tax deduction conversation for her. So
Okay.
we can get to that, there's a lot of places we can work through. That could even revolve into a parking lot down at the point, which relieves a lot of other problems. But do you see that this is more than a 10, 17 layer cake?
Yeah.
We have a potential option for the Coast Guard west end part of the island. The real hard part is the central section. Down east, they're doing pretty decent. We kept the ditches, we can just clean that. This center section is really the conundrum, because everybody wants to be in that business district, and until we do an overlay, because there's all that asphalt, because we could then take that money and you could clean Archer's Creek, you could do restoration work to it, you could put estuarian improvements back in position, there's all kinds of things you can do. But again, it's gonna be, who do you make mad? And what we came to find out is apparently we made the wrong 35 people mad, and they came in that room gangbusters. It's difficult. It's difficult to tell someone no.
Well, no, I'm just kidding. So why y'all looking at me? I'm learning that real quick.
3-year-old teach it to you.
Boy.
So that goes into, and just keep it moving forward towards that 5 o'clock stop on this. What other information you guys need as we review this, as we review, because again, what we're looking at out of this committee is, I think we've covered a lot of issues just in today's meeting that code changes could be drafted to try to alleviate some of the concerns. So this is that, and you're gonna see this in every meeting we have. Is there anything that staff's missing as far as providing you guys when you're reviewing it with the anticipated recommendation for the planning board to start a review before it makes it to you guys as board commissioners?
We have an Excel spreadsheet with a list of documented areas of concern. Has that been shared with this group? Because if not, we can forward it to this group.
Yeah, we need to forward this to that.
You can get the whole list.
Yeah.
That'd be good.
Yeah, because essentially hotspots only really cover 2 areas.
Yeah,
But like I
there's a whole
said, there's
bunch.
almost 200
Yeah.
that is already documented, that need to be.
All of Reed
checked.
Drive.
Yeah.
Reed Drive is complex because it's below grade, and unless we buy the corner of Reed and East Seaview, or Reed and West Seaview, or somewhere in that vicinity that has a substantial ability to hold, that we're running out of choices of where to move it, because between East Seaview and West, there's no public access. So even if we turn the system around, because we had easement agreement from, what were their names? I know it was Buddy.
David?
Buddy, but,
No, David.
Davis's. So
Yeah.
we have permission from the property, and they've been tremendous to put the pump station in. And it really, in their front yard, they were super gracious. But where do you pump it? And so if you try to pump it to the ocean, we'd have to get personal property access agreements in position, because we don't have a public access there. The only other solution was buy a neighboring lot, dig a nice retention basin, vegetated, make it look as pretty as possible. That's $500,000 right there. But the solution, I think, in the Land's End solution was a bit over $850,000 was our estimate. And I'll be surprised if we come in at a number.
I'm wondering for this board, maybe do a summary of the existing stormwater ordinance and basically bullet kind of what we require now. And then that way we as a board can discuss what we want that to look like going forward. I know you had it, I believe, in the last, maybe the first meeting, the second meeting, but maybe revisit that, have it, and that way we have it in front of us. We've had a lot of discussion, a lot of good points to talk about, but that way we can look at it and see, you know, I mean, one thing that troubles me is what we talked about this week was, you know, our town has 0 impervious limitation on a lot. I'm sorry, we do. We have a 65% requirement. 35% natural area, and the rest of it can be impervious. Exactly. So, as long as you're outside of the 575 from ORW water, which coincidentally, where we're having the major problems at, is there. Is there. Anywhere mean high water offset 575, that is where the entire lot sanes the 35% natural area. And now the state just released 200 septic systems to be traffic rated if they have separation from the seasonal high water table. So therefore, all of the septic can now go below the traffic surface. So that's one of the concerns that I have from a design standpoint, that, you know, most other municipalities have a 40% requirement. Or, you know, I don't think with these lots we can do a 12 or 15 or 20, it's really difficult. But a 40 is not unreasonable in my opinion. And that's something that if we were to look at some of these average size lots, maybe we could see what the impervious coverage is, you know, and show the board like, hey, this number works. You know, because I think we all agree that 65% is ridiculous. That's, you know, just ridiculous. And right now the code allows for that.
So we talked about increasing the 35% rule, and it got killed at this committee because of the developers that were in that conversation. Talked about how that's gonna stunt growth, we're not gonna be able to handle it.
I agree with that.
I gotta ask this question to Chris. The site that we had to go to on Sound Drive with Ricky, yesterday or day before? Yesterday. What did that site look like before he started? Because when I got there, there was 2 trees, a brand new wall, and all retaining material. What was there?
It was a vacant lot. I mean, I don't know if it had something before they started developing that got removed. In that area, there's a lot of mobile homes that rotated out.
So if it was relatively vacant, here's the question. What's going back on it?
Right, I mean,
There's nothing on it. I want you guys, there was like literally 2 trees on the entire, everything else was sand, it was 2 trees, and one tree looked like Charlie Brown, and I was laughing at it.
and you're saying that lot might have been like that for 15, 20 years with
knows?
only those 2 trees on it?
What is it?
But see,
Well, you got the ability to see it.
well, we don't though. The ordinance doesn't have anything to do, and I have this discussion with a lot of homeowners. The ordinance, the natural area is undeveloped land.
Grass.
It could be anything. It could be a sand dune. It could be coastal marsh grass. There's no definition that says it has to have a certain density of trees.
It's supposed to be undisturbed, though, correct?
Undeveloped, yes, sir.
Undeveloped or undisturbed, because during
That's the same,
construction,
that's,
no, because you can disturb something and you can restore it. If the contractors are supposed to stay out of this area and they can encroach in 10 feet,
it is no development period. You're supposed to mark it off and not touch it.
and so it's
It's
undisturbed.
undisturbed. And then you
Okay.
have to get a tree permit
Right.
to remove a tree from it.
Right, it's undisturbed area and and that's the natural
Yes,
lay
sir.
of the land.
And I agree with the builders in some of these 10, 12,000 square foot lots, you know, 35%, I was a proponent of a tiered system. But 35%, so say it's a 10,000 square foot lot, 3,500 square foot to natural area undisturbed, you got a 1,500 square foot house, 1,500 square foot conventional bed system, you're all of a sudden, and you're meeting setbacks every which way, there's nowhere to develop. So I agree with both sides, you know, you have these,
It's a complex problem.
I'll take one on the nose. My lot that I developed for my personal house, it got complaints. But my 35% natural area is north of my seawall. So, you know, we have these ordinances, and as long as you follow them, you're good, but it doesn't always help everybody. And it's gonna make people mad either way, just, you know.
And that's the bad thing, you can't, when you say 35%, somebody rides by and goes, there's not 35% worth of trees there, it's nothing but sand.
It's a misperception.
But then they don't see that there's a seawall there,
Mhm.
and that from that seawall is still their property, and all that is undisturbed marsh grass.
Yep.
And that's the 35%.
35%.
The key is undisturbed. The key to me, I got 45 years' experience in construction industry, that's what I retired from. I know what undisturbed is, you know, and so you call it a natural area, well, naturally, there were no trees there. You've got a 35% undisturbed square footage that you have to meet. And if it was tall grass and weeds, and that's your 35%, you've complied. But you don't park equipment out there, you don't dig it up to pile dirt on top of it, you don't work in those areas. And that's what is being abused. These areas are being marked out and they're not being respected. And the builders are going in with their skyjacks and their boom lifts, and they're digging their trenches, and they're piling all their spoil up, and it's running over into the areas, and they're clearing out too much and saying, oh, I'm sorry. And nobody is monitoring it. They're not gonna stop if it's not monitored.
That computer's really let you get a hold of it. I know I had the same problem. I was trying to navigate it the other day.
Alright, so that,
Not me.
That's me, sorry about that.
You got it, dog.
So there's, you guys should ride by this today.
Mhm.
There's nothing left.
What's the date of that photograph?
It's January 2024. What's the address? Give them all the address.
it is 8403 Sound Drive.
So ride by 8403 Sound Drive, go take a picture, go take a mental, take a physical, and then come back here and we'll talk about it. Because we were there yesterday. Now, they elevated that property. They put a retaining wall in and brought in fill. And the fill
Did
that
they
I
have a
saw.
permit?
Yeah, 100%.
They had a permit for a retaining wall?
Everything that
Showed the revised grades?
When we,
How they get it approved?
because they've got the retention system.
It's permissible.
But when we did the natural area staking, these trees were not there. So I don't know when.
When did
like-
you do the natural area staking?
Weeks ago.
Yeah, I mean, it was. when
That
it
picture was taken in January?
Yes, sir.
So you got tree permits on file for all that, right?
That's,
Okay.
But that's what we're saying.
Okay, but what if the previous property owner cut down those trees?
That's what I'm saying.
And then they sold a piece of property?
Which
Now
is usually
who's,
what happens.
now who's responsible?
All right,
Because
so-
they wanna sell it,
Look,
they,
okay, Nathan has a parcel that he was developing at the corner of Live Oak and Sound. The realtor was the guy that cut the trees down, right?
Yeah, who were the previous
Right.
seller, buyer? Yeah,
Yeah, so
somebody.
he cut all the trees down, and I went there with Jason Holland, went there with Steve Finch, who was commissioner still at the time. They were losing their minds. Not the street to cut a tree on, by the way, just in case no one's not paying attention to some of the dynamics of the podium. So, we go there, and the guy's like, I've been doing this for years. He goes, no, you haven't. Yes, I have, blah, blah. I said, no, you haven't. He said, you can't sell a lot without cutting it. I go, yes, you can. And like, as soon as Paige was driving by while we were standing there talking to him. And so, you ultimately ended up buying it right after
Yeah,
and
I
tried to
forgot that.
correct all the issues. But what do you do when that is already done? So this comes back to, I want you to really focus in on, you can have preliminary pre-rules telling you how to do it right, you got people doing it right. You also have to focus on what happens when someone doesn't follow the rules. what is the immediate first step, the ramification, the penalty, and the timeline for corrective action. And it should be so clear it fits on 2 8.5 by 11 pieces of paper. Like, don't do this or that will happen.
NCDEQ does it very well. Stop work order first. Second, penalty per day. Erosion control can be upwards of $10,000
Per day.
calendar day. So if you go in there and tell them $150, $200 a day, it won't stretch long. Or $500 a day. But it needs to be approved by you all.
And backed up
And
by
backed
the
up.
elected officials, because when the person goes to the field,
Mhm.
we can't be undermined and second guessed by the next elected group.
Do you have the staff to research that right there?
No, not that. No way.
The
Now, if
research,
somebody calls them, they can go out, but there's no way that they can spend time riding around looking. to
No,
see
no,
if
that's
there's
not what I'm insinuating. You have a photograph of a defined period of time, you have property records that say who owned the lot.
oh yeah.
You have property records when their lot was sold, and you have pictures of what the lot looks like now, it would seem, and I'm, it's the simple version. Do you have the staff who can sit back and create that timeline and say, this lot was like this here, it was sold here, it was sold again here, so-and-so, so-and-so, and now it's got this, and in the last 9 months, this has become a disaster. That takes somebody, a couple days as they're researching and waiting for people to get back to them with information.
Well, he's
Do you
asked
have
the
the staff to
question.
do that?
I have the answer. We also have the capacity of the staff is the question, but do we have the competency? And currently the answer is yes, because we have we have 2 certified drone pilots. And so my recommendation was prior to the start of development, a drone image should be taken at said address. Then at a period, whether it's 60 days or a period at completion, a drone image should be taken at said address. If you really wanted to do this right, we have researched and brought forward a concept for a DJI Drone 2 box, which if we deployed 3 DJI Drone 2s to Emerald Isle, we could fly them remote from A, B, and C, west, center, east. We could sit at the computer right here, have a predetermined flight pattern. The drone would leave town hall, it would fly over that site, it would hover at the exact GIS location and shoot the same picture 3 different times, start, middle, and end, and would document. It would automatically download and go to iWorks. You've seen our email trails lately about, do we have the legal right and responsibility to do that? I want to tell you that you fully do. And
Good.
But, contrary to popular opinion, there are tools to do that. And if we are serious about what we're trying to preserve, that's so much better than me getting a complaint, calling Chris and saying, this is how it goes. Tell Mark to go fly, what address are we at, 8403? Tell Mark to go fly it. So then he goes over to Mark and says, Mark, go fly it. So then Mark goes over and he flies it, he comes back, he downloads it, he emails us all, and then that's happening 5 days a week right now.
How much are these drones?
20 grand a pop. We can knock it right out.
Do I get to fly it at least once?
Yep. But then, here's where, this is why I'm saying to you as my boss, why this is so important. So we went out and did that study. Remember the email that Roy was talking about, beach commissions coming up? I'm gonna break it all down for you. Moffitt and Nickel did a complete topographical detailed study of our beachfront. We're gonna get our report back. Immediately during Monday's event, I talked to Mark, I said, as soon as the sky's clear, we're flying. So Tuesday, my man went and flew the entire beach.
Great video, by the way.
Wednesday, Joe Stanton from Department of Public Safety calls. He goes, Matt Zapp, how's it going? I go, it's not good. How much range you get? I tell him. How much damage you have? I tell him. He goes, all right, well, the state's got more than $20 million in aggregated damage now with bridges, issues, and things down in Southport, Wrightstone, and Ocean Isle. If you can document everything that the town does, and you can go fly, I said, we already flew it. He goes, do you have documented, can you show cubic yardage loss? I said, yes, sir, I can have that calculated for you. I had a phone call Friday, 9 a.m. with Moffitt and Nickel. He's like, oh my God, you guys are always ahead. I said, we can get you the data, we're gonna know how much we've lost. He goes, well, we can get it funded. If we can do that, we can get you back $20 million. Would you not give me the $60,000 for the $20 million return that I know is coming Friday? I brought that concept to Ryan Davenport and said, Ryan, we need to look at this. 5 drones across the whole Bow Banks, and we can pre-fly it, we can post-storm fly it. He said, all right, well, we'll look at it. We did it. I bet you we're the only one of the 4 municipalities that are gonna have documented evidence of data loss by tomorrow. These are big issues. We have solutions. They're not simple conversations.
Thank
Go
you,
look
Matt.
at that one, see what you think.
Thank you, Matt.
We're trying.
Yeah, no,
Thank you.
no.
Because when that $20 million comes rolling back in, or $10 million,
You get a cut?
nope, but the point is,
I just want to fly the drone, man. That's it. Mine only costs $2,000. I want to fly one that costs 20.
let's bring this boots to the ground. Without that beach, how well do you do?
I don't live here.
The reality is, we have to keep our industry rolling, and our industry is that beach results in our taxes being low. So the fact that we paid that guy who's not just sitting over there making movies, to go fly that beach, to document that, to carry that data in a file, which they would have charged us $30,000 to do. Your boy did that in about 3.5 hours.
And made how much?
He's making $60,000 a year.
Thank you, Matt.
He's
Yeah.
killing it.
Appreciate it.
What's that, man?
So
Tell me what you
where
need.
are we? What else do you want? I heard Stormwater Basics 101, an intro to EI Stormwater for the next meeting.
Should we
The
put a
list
packet,
needs to go out.
Yeah, we can do that pretty much immediately.
I'll send you the list that you remind me tomorrow.
should we put a packet, you know, the NCDQ Best Management Practice Manual? It has the subchapter that says how to choose your BMP.
I think that's a great idea.
That would probably help substantially when we're trying to put pen on paper saying, you know, like what the article said, you need to have vegetated areas, well, that's fine, but they have to be so wide and so long and we don't have the space for it. But that subchapter is very, very essential to a designer, whether it's a contractor, homeowner, builder, whatever, for them, so for us to make a rule and ordinance, I think that would help substantially.
Yeah, because, I mean, our code basically references that whole design manual is our reference on stormwater enforcement in town, so. And they've got a lot of wealth of information on there that I think would be beneficial, so.
Dr. Bill Hunt's done a fabulous job with that. That's what I have my master's degree in, underneath Dr. Bill Hunt at NC State. He has done an amazing job, not only in North Carolina, but worldwide.
Yep.
With that manual, he's done, it's unbelievable.
Yeah. A lot of effort into that, so.
Yes. And continuous, he updates all the time.
Yep. There's our next 3 meetings. You guys have a 12-month cycle. So obviously, we have room to move in and schedule things for 2025.
Can you change that 17th? That's still the Thursday date. October 15th is Tuesday.
Okay,
But it's Tuesday.
okay,
Just need to update that.
yeah.
And remind me, Chris, have you sent out e-bites for each of these? I recall, if you've already e-bited them, great. If you haven't, please push all the e-bites in advance.
Yeah, so that'll be tomorrow that we'll do with these next 3 meetings.
Thank you.
But, you know, the question is, how far into 25 do you guys wanna take this? We can do it in quarter year, segments if you like, so we can go in, find Thursdays that we can meet in the meeting room, for January, February, March, and I can give those potential dates to you guys.
Can I ask a question?
Yes, sir.
Well, February.
Does this room suit you because it's a little bit easier to manage?
No, I kind of like the.
You're closer. This
Feel
room's
cozy.
okay.
Feel like afterwards we're gonna eat popcorn and watch a movie.
Yeah.
That's cool.
If you, because it's still room for the public to come, it's, the only difficulty is the parking, but we'll make sure we have staff across the street, but if this space is okay, we can get it ironed out in here.
Yeah. No,
Yep.
I'm perfectly
Yeah.
fine with this.
This might
space.
make it more comfortable.
Yeah.
And it's easier to collaborate when we start actually looking
Yeah,
at.
we can work
Up until
around the
this
maps.
point, we haven't had to look at anything, you know.
We can, well, anything else that you need on the wall, we can make sure we get you to.
Yep.
I was saying, You going in February?
I'll be gone February.
I am too.
You are. So I'll be gone the month of February and
Yeah, I
That's
think we
what
can
he-
maybe do early January and late January, and then maybe early March.
Is that,
Just maybe shoot that in the email and see if the other members, you know.
are cool with that, because me and him will both be out of state.
But if we can't, I gotta come back, I mean.
We can fly together.
Yeah. Did you see that new flight from Wilmington?
Mhm.
Please keep it.
Yeah, right.
okay, all right. Now we're at comments. Any comments from committee members?
I just wanna say, commissioners and staff, I appreciate y'all. I know what you've gone through, well, I don't know, but I know what you've gone through the last week. I appreciate all the effort for the town. As a taxpayer, concerned citizen, builder, developer, engineer in the town, I appreciate y'all's, patience with everything that's gone on in the last, well, we'll say the last week, but we all know the last 3 years has been tough, so I appreciate you. And I think we can get some good momentum here at the end of the year and really try to, you know, not put a moratorium on building, but do it right.
Any other comments?
No comments.
Right on time, guys.
Woo.
Can you tell me what UDO, the acronym UDO stands for?
Unified Development Ordinance.